I'm going to read a couple verses out of my Apocrypha book. It is from the 1800s. I want to read about the section of the abomination that was in the temple in First Maccabees. But before I do, I want to read something that Messiah said himself. This is Matthew 24, verse 15. This is the Amplified Version. So when ye see the appalling sacrilege, the abomination that astonishes and makes desolate, spoken by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader take notice and ponder and consider and heed this. And he is quoting Daniel 9:27, 11:31, 12:11. But he's quoting what was said in Daniel. Now Messiah himself is pointing this out. Okay, so before I talk about what takes place during the days of the Maccabees, I want to read some notes, because a lot of people think that Hanukkah is nothing that we have to pay attention to, because that it's not one of the 7 feast days. I mean, even people that call themselves Christians don't follow the feast days, even though the feast days are something that we should pay attention to, because Messiah came to live and fulfill those feast days, the 7 feast days, in his flesh. Okay, so I'm going to go back to something that I found. It says that our rabbis taught when primitive Adam saw that the days were getting gradually shorter, he said, "Woe to me, because I have sinned. The world around me is being darkened and returning to the state of chaos and confusion. This, then, is the kind of death to which I have been sentenced from heaven." So when he saw that, the days were getting darker, he thought that, he remembered what God had said in the garden. And so he thought, death was coming upon him. So he began keeping an 8-day fast. But as he observed the winter equinox and noted the day getting increasingly longer, he said, "This is the world's course." So he was like, he was used to being in the garden. He didn't understand, this kind of stuff being outside of the garden. Right, so then he realized this is the world's course now. And he set forth to keep an 8-day festivity. In the following year, he appointed both as festivals, and he fixed them for the sake of heaven, but the heathens appointed them for the sake of idolatry. So this is, end quote, Hanukkah, which was done how many years later. They think that man just created Hanukkah, but it was a feast. It was an observance that Adam started right after he came out of the Garden of Eden. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was to understand who the Hasmoneans are. The Maccabean kings were all descended from Levi. Some have speculated that the reason that they did not endure is due to the fact that the Torah indicates that the descendants of Judah are supposed to rule in Israel. They are also known as the Hasmoneans because they came from the city of Hasmona, however you spell it or say it. Okay, so I just wanted to go over those things. Now, I want to read, and, I want to stress that, not Hanukkah is something that we need to pay attention to, because Messiah himself in Matthew, or in the Word, pointed it out for a reason. So we're gonna find out the history of what it is. And on the 15th day of Kislev, in the 145th year, they builded an abomination of desolation upon the altar. And in the city of Judah, on every side, they builded idol altars, and at the doors of the houses and in the streets they burnt incense, and they rent in pieces the books of the law, which they found, and set them on fire. Now I'm going to pause here and go back to something that I read yesterday in a video. Okay, yesterday I read in Deuteronomy 4, verse 13. And this is the Amplified Version. And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform the 10 commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tables of stone. And then I said this is the mechanical translation, and which is a better version in my opinion. And he told you his covenant, which he directed you to do, the 10 words, and he wrote them upon the 2 slabs of stone. The covenant is the 10 words. It's the written terms to the covenant. And God sits upon them in the Ark of the Testimony, or the Ark of the Covenant, because it's the covenant terms, words to the covenant. That's why it's in the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so this king was going around and telling his soldiers to tear up the pieces of the books of the law, which they found, and set them on fire. And whosoever was found with a book of the covenant, and of this, if any consented to the law, the king's sentence delivered him to death. So even this book backs up. It's the covenant. The books of the law is the books of the covenant. Thus did they in their might unto Israel, to those that were found month by month in the cities. And on the 25th day of the month they sacrificed upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. And the women that had circumcised their children they put to death according to the commandment. And they hung their babies around their necks, and destroyed their houses, and them that had been circumcised, or them that had circumcised them. And many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat unclean things. And they chose to die, and that they might not be defiled with the meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. And they died. And there came exceeding great wrath upon Israel. In those days rose up Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joram, from Jerusalem. And he dwelt in Modin, and he had 5 sons: John, who was surnamed Gaddis, Simon, who was called Thasi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar, who was called Avraham, Jonathan, who was called Aphas. And he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and in Jerusalem, and he said, Woe is me, wherefore I was born to see the destruction of my people, and the destruction of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was given unto the hand of the enemy, the sanctuary into the hand of the aliens. Her temple is become as a man that was glorious. Her vessels of glory are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in her streets, her young man with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not inherited her palaces, and gotten possession of her spoils? Her adorning is all taken away. Instead of a free woman, she is become a bondwoman. And behold, our holy things, and our beauty, and our glory are laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned them. Wherefore should we live any longer? And Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourn exceedingly. And the king's officers that were enforcing the apostasy came into the city Modin to sacrifice, and many of Israel came unto them. And Mattathias and his sons were gathered together, and the king's officers answered and spake unto Mattathias, saying, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and do the commandment of the king, as all the nations have done, and the men of Judah, and they that remain in Jerusalem. And thou and thy house shall be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy sons shall be honored with silver and gold and many gifts. And Mattathias answered and said with a loud voice, If all the nations that are in the house of the king's dominion hearken unto him, to fall away each one from the worship of his fathers, and have made choice to follow his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Choose you this day who you will serve, right? Heaven forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances, which is the covenant. We will not hearken to the king's words to go aside from our worship on the right hand or on the left. And when he had left speaking these words, there came a Jew in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was in Modin according to the king's command. And Mattathias saw it, and his zeal was kindled, and his reins trembled, and he showed forth his wrath according to the judgment, and ran and slew him upon the altar. And the king's officers who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at the time, and pulled down the altar, and he was zealous for the law, even as Phinehas did unto Zimri the son of Selu. And Mattathias cried out in the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous for the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him come forth after me. And he and his sons fled into the mountains and forsook all that they had in the city. Okay, so I was going to read another part that I had found, and I think it might be in Josephus, I'm not sure, where they're talking about what they sacrifice to the idols. Let's see. Okay, yes, I found it. Okay, so it is still in the section that I was reading, but farther up. It says, And King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, that each should forsake his own laws, and all the nations agreed according to the word of the king. And many of Israel consented to his worship, and sacrificed to the idols, and profaned the Sabbath. And I had made a post on that. I'm going to do some more on the Sabbath. And the king sent letters by the hand of the messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the laws strange to the land, and should forbid whole burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the sanctuary to their God, and should profane the Sabbaths and feasts, and pollute the sanctuary, and them that were holy, that they should build altars and temples and shrines for idols, and should sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, and that they should leave their sons uncircumcised, and that they should make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, so that they might forget the law, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever shall not do according to the word of the king shall die. According to all these words wrote he to his whole kingdom, and he appointed overseers over all the people, and commanded the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. And from the people were gathered together unto them many, every one that had forsaken the law, and they did evil things in the land, and they made Israel to hide themselves in every place of subterfuge which they had. So, and then, they were supposed to build altars everywhere. But the choice meat to sacrifice to their idols was specifically swine's flesh. And in God's word, it says we're not supposed to eat meat sacrificed to idols. And there's another place where I read, it was continually stressed that it was swine's flesh. And that's because it's an unclean animal. It is considered unclean. And that's why, those that follow the enemy, the evil one, want anything and everything that is unclean. And swine is one that was their choice sacrifice to their gods, which was ultimately Satan, right? But that is just the few things that I wanted to talk about today. Thanks.